Day 2 of action in Hoover, Alabama at the SEC baseball tournament is officially underway. Texas A&M taking down Mississippi State 9-0, and Tennessee putting the finishing touches on a 15-6 throttling of Alabama. We are here breaking down, dissecting, and recapping what took place. Also, looking back at last night because of weather delays, did not go live late last night. Florida gets the win over South Carolina, but more notably, Paul Mainieri, it sounds like, will be back for the 2026 season. Georgia has also extended Wes Johnsons. Missouri is bringing Garrett Jackson back for 2026. We got a lot to discuss, safe to say, here on this middle of the day in Wednesday. Again, guys, I'm Chris Phillips. He's Jake Mckeever. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, where we get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. And as always, we're brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/SECU to join today and get started with $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/SECU to get $250 in bonus bets today. Day 2 of the SEC baseball tournament in Hoover, Alabama. We are breaking down the first 2 games of action here on this Wednesday, May the 21st. Also, we'll look back at what happened last night briefly with Florida's win over South Carolina. And a couple of coaches, we know their futures. Paul Mainieri, Garrett Jackson, both will be back at their respective schools. And Wes Johnsons, you can remove his name from the Mississippi State hot boards, if you will, as he gets the big extension today. Guys, once again, I am Chris Phillips. Joining me to help break it all down, my good friend, partner in crime, Jake Mckeever, joins the show once again. Jake, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. We got a lot to discuss, a lot to dive into here on this Wednesday.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one to try and squeeze into a half-hour ESPN window, if you will. But, you know, it's been a great day of baseball, despite the games kind of being stinkers, if you will.
Yeah, obviously, we're going live, and we can talk more about that, I think, later in the week, too, especially if the trend continues. Obviously, I made the point on social media, Jake, and it's not breaking news by any means. We thought this one might turn into a good game around the 5th inning or so. Of course, I'm talking Tennessee-Bama. We had a tie ball game, 1-run ball game. Since then, Tennessee has just run away with it. We'll talk more about that in a second. But it's been a lot of blowouts. It's been a lot of belt to ass, if you will, here in Hoover, Alabama. Jake, before we talk about the games today, I want to just really, really quickly touch on, we don't have to spend a lot of time on the game because Florida disposes of South Carolina. Again, normally we will be going live at night or after games to break them down. But with the weather delay, A&M State getting moved to this morning, didn't just want to go live for one singular game, especially when the result felt so obvious. Gators stay hot, 15-4 in their last 19 SEC games. South Carolina's season comes to an end finally. The bigger news, Jake, Paul Mainieri will be retained and will return for 2026. He also mentioned Terry Rooney ain't going anywhere, the pitching coach, after South Carolina logged their worst ERA in school history for a season. And that was just part of, Jake, some of the numbers or some of the stats, some of the different milestones they set, some of the history they made. That was negative history for a very proud Gamecocks baseball program. I want to get your take, your thoughts just initially on the fact that Paul Mainieri, number 1, will return, but it sounds like number 2 won't be making any staff changes going into next season.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I got told by a few players, which, by the way, every single player, past and present, has basically voiced their displeasure for Paul Mainieri staying on.
Not to cut you off, how about Roman Kimball's father today?
Yes.
That one was
for the jugular. I've talked to a few scouts that have talked about how bad of a coach Terry Rooney is, how much they've ruined some of the staff. Last summer we saw a lot of coaches turn down that job, and it wasn't as prestigious as a job as I think Ray Tanner expected it to be when he went to go hire. And I think that Paul Mainieri is going to have a very similar mindset when it comes to recruiting. I think I saw that their recruiting's down in the 70s, and they're normally a program that recruits in the top 20. But this should come as no surprise that he's sticking around. I mean, the contract that Ray Tanner signed him to last year is $5 million. Rooney is the highest paid pitching coach in the SEC.
And Monty Lee is one of the highest, if not the highest paid assistant in college baseball.
And you had a lot of coaches turn it down last year. So realistically, I saw a figure that it would have taken $12 million to fire Paul Mainieri and bring in another coach. There is not a single program, not Texas, not LSU, not anybody that would spend $12 million to fix their baseball program before they even get NIL buy-in. So, and I don't think any coach would take a job where they're not given NIL stuff. It's going to be a mess. They're going to have to overpay for people. It really is just a stark contrast of where college baseball was when Paul Mainieri was rolling at LSU. I mean, they said a stat last night. Granted, they didn't win the tournament, but Paul Mainieri has won over half of the tournaments that he's participated in the SEC, and he can't even win 6 games in the SEC this year. They were very uncompetitive. This team quit on him in every sense of the word. But the flip side of this is, I heard a quote at the beginning of the year. Is it the chicken or the egg? Is Paul Mainieri a bad coach because the players don't like him, or is it because the players don't have a lot of heart and grit and the type of players that these are the type of players that got their coach fired last year? So that's what's going to be really interesting. Is I think that they should give Paul Mainieri the time to go in and build a program, and if it fails, no one's going to look down on South Carolina for keeping Paul Mainieri for another year.
You mentioned, too, Jake, the first losing season for Paul Mainieri as a head coach, I believe, since 1992. So this season truly was uncharted waters, not just for South Carolina, but for him as well. I said it earlier in the season, Jake, and I'll just echo it. We don't have to spend a ton of time on it because it's not the most fun topic to discuss. Because I agree.
Well, Chris, there is one other thing too. My buddy Pear, who does a lot of advanced analytics, they actually over-attained on their how many games analytics said that they should have won. They should have won 3 games based on advanced analytics. So it was even a better year than on paper.
Yeah,
it was just an embarrassing display all around, I think, from a program that has a rabid fan base, that has a good park. They're going to have to figure out something from an NIL standpoint, or they're going to become the Nebraska of college baseball.
Yeah, Jake, when South Carolina is rolling, it's one of the best programs and, dare I say, best jobs in the country. I know job is the definition of that has changed because of NIL, and there's so many different things that factor in. But when it's going right, it's certainly one of the best destinations in the SEC. But I said it earlier this season, and I'll say it again. I don't disagree with you that you kind of just have to wear it, because where is $5.2 million coming from to pay Paul Mainieri? Where's the rest of the money coming from to pay the assistants? Where is the rest of the money coming from to hire a new head coach with a new staff and still have money left over to allocate to NIL to build a roster? This just reaffirms that Ray Tanner, for all of the great things he did for the baseball program, getting into a level of being truly an elite, back-to-back national championships in 10 and 11, get into a third straight in 2012. He is by far, without a doubt, Jake, easily the worst athletic director in the University of South Carolina's history. The fact that on his way out, he felt like, and I think he knew it wasn't the best move for the program, but on his way out, he wanted to do his buddy a favor. And like you said, they swung and missed on a few guys. But I have to know in my heart of hearts, he knew it wasn't the best move for South Carolina. He does his buddy a favor. He brings in Paul Mainieri. He signs him to that contract with that ridiculous buyout. And now you're stuck in a position, Jake, where the best way I can equate South Carolina, you are Tennessee football before Josh Heupel got there. You are a once proud program, totally lost in the wilderness. You've become a laughingstock. You're an embarrassment to certain degrees, to certain varying levels, if you will. You can't do it right now because, like you said, all the buyouts in only 1 year, you got to bring him back, and you just got to wear this, and you got to ride it out. But who's going to be their Josh Heupel to come in after him and get them at least to a point of respectability to where they're just middle of the pack, competing in the SEC, fighting to go to postseason? Because I think everybody around there has to accept the fact this program is not what it once was. You can no longer tout this program as, well, this is just an elite, but we've got the wrong guy, or this is missing, or that. The program has completely fallen off the cliff. You haven't been to Omaha in over a decade now, and you're certainly not getting closer to it. You're falling further from it. So, yeah, it's a sad situation.
If Georgia makes the College World Series, it'll be them and Missouri as the 2 longest droughts in the SEC for College World Series, which is kind of fitting that they're near the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It is. And we'll see what happens, obviously, with revenue sharing. And I agree with you, though. I mean, I don't think recruiting is going to get better under Paul Mainieri because, you know, how much longer does he really have there? He's obviously on the chopping block. I mean, are you really going to sign your career to a guy? And we know baseball recruiting starts so early at the high school level. I mean, can you really realistically tell a kid, hey, I'm going to be here in 5 or 6 years to coach you? No, you can't do that. And like you
And
said,
it's so clicky too. Like there's a job in Texas that I've heard that a lot of these kids that go to summer ball don't want to sign there.
yeah,
And it's kind of showing up in the records. So that's the other thing is every kid that's in that program right now at South Carolina that's going to go to the Northwoods League, going to go to the Cape, going to go to the Appy League. I mean, word's going to get around that this is a hard place to play and find. Like, I don't know what they did this year with the roster. Like, that's the other part that's even the most mind-boggling is there were just guys that would play that had no business playing.
yeah.
And they had guys that were sitting on the bench that had no business sitting on the bench, that weren't injured. Like Kennedy Jones didn't play for the last 6 weeks of the season. You mean to tell me that he's not good enough to play for this team?
Yeah, it was one of those things, Jake, in closing on this, because we could spend a lot of time on it, but it was certainly, there were varying levels and degrees to why this season was the embarrassment it was, because I do agree with you. You know, coming in the season, I didn't have high hopes and expectations for this club, but this club should have been better. I know what the analytics say, but just with some of the pieces they had, this club. And
they had so much talent. Like you look at it, and it's
Ethan
like
Petrie getting hurt down the stretch didn't help either. But they should have been better than 6-24. That's just, they should have been better than losing 22-2 or whatever the score was, and losing it's 24-1 in the 5th inning at Auburn. Like that, it was also coaching malpractice at times, and maybe some of Paul Mainieri's stubbornness from the standpoint of, these aren't my guys, or I don't like certain guys. We heard a lot about that. I mean, Roman Kimball's dad coming out there and saying stuff like he did. So, yeah, it's a mess all the way around, but I think it's one, if you're South Carolina, the bottom line is this. They're not moving off of him. They're not going to get rid of him, because as big as college baseball's gotten and as much as it's growing and as much as we love it, you're right, Jake, it's not football. You're not paying double-digit millions of dollars to move off of a head baseball coach. You're not doing it. So, I think.
But what did get lost in the translation in that game last night was the dominant victory from the Florida Gators. And that was the one game, I know this is weird to say because it was South Carolina who really didn't want to be there, but that was the game that you really were kind of nervous about if you're Kevin O'Sullivan, because the pitching is really set up down the stretch for this tournament to go on a run here. And they did it with the offense. I mean, Brody Donay, 5 home runs in his last 23 ABs. That was the consensus on Twitter, is not that South Carolina stinks, is that, Florida's legit and for real. And about their pitching situation, I think, better than anybody, but it is going to be a fun time to be a Gator. As long as they can take it one game at a time, I feel like they're set up the best to win the tournament.
Yeah, Liam Peterson on the bump tonight. We'll talk more about that game later tonight, but certainly they blistered the baseball yesterday. It's been a hit parade for them. Bunch of different guys. It doesn't feel like it's just one guy, Jake. It's a bunch of different guys, and I know it was South Carolina staff, but still, they've been doing this the last, 6+ weeks. Like we said, 15-4 in their last 19 SEC games. And they got a pretty.
I don't know where Kevin O'Sullivan finds these unsung heroes in the SEC tournament. Like they were talking about on the broadcast last night about, oh yeah, this pitcher had only thrown 5 innings all year and he throws 7 shutty. And that's just like a stand. So it's really interesting to see how Kevin O'Sullivan gets these guys ready. Because again, did you see that tweet that Tanner Allen had said about this being almost like an all-star game, that if, you go out there, you play hard, but if you lose, it's not really that big of a deal. Do you think that that's kind of what it is now?
With the SEC tournament as a whole, you mean?
Yes.
I think the mentality varies from team to team. I mean, I obviously it was documented. I talked to Kevin O'Sullivan. I mean, from what he told me is that it's easy for everybody to say that, it just doesn't matter, but it sets a really bad tone if you go into any tournament, any really baseball game, with the mentality that winning isn't the most important thing, and we're not trying to win every pitch, win every inning, win every game, because that can just kind of creep in and set a bad tone with regionals literally starting next weekend. So it's a balance, more so from the coaches Like today, and we'll talk about this game. Alabama doesn't pitch Riley Quick. Why do they not do that? Because they're not going to bring him back on short rest. Obviously with the Tommy John he had, or what was it, last year he had it. So coming back, they're not going to bring him back. You're not going to do something like that. Whereas, hey, if you're in Omaha, you might say, you know what, this is for the national championship. Like, you do what you got to do. But at the same time, I think everybody's trying to win. I think everybody's trying. Some teams are just set up better to win, which we'll move into that, and we'll talk about it. And, of course, we'll talk more Florida tonight. Obviously, again, take care of business against South Carolina. The bigger news from there, Paul Mainieri's returning for 2026. But, Jake, moving into the games today, the Texas A&M Aggies, arguably the most confusing team in college baseball. They come out, obviously. You talk about a team that wants to win. Well, A&M
they do.
Win. They have to win. They know they have to win. They start Ryan Prager. He was fantastic. 5 1/3, 4 hits, 0 earned runs, 6 strikeouts. It was just a pitching display by Texas A&M, shutting down that Mississippi State lineup. Jace Lavalette setting the tone early with the monster home run, that 6-run second inning. He hits the grand slam, goes 1 for 4, but again, the one swing was a big one. Really set the tone for the game, Jake, and they just never looked back. Your thoughts on Texas A&M? I think they've probably got to make a run to Sunday to have a shot to get in. But
I think they got to win it. You got to win the first one. Got to win the first one.
You had to win the first one to have a chance to do that. Texas A&M takes care of their business, and like you mentioned, top of the show, it goes with the trend. These games being blowouts. A&M disposing of Mississippi State 9-0.
Yeah, I can be honest with you. It looked like when Mississippi State was leaving the Met last night during the tornado roaming, obviously they were panning the cameras to them. I leaned over to Mike after that and I said, they're going to lose. Like, they're just going to be happy to be there, and A&M's going to come out, punch them in the mouth early when they're still half asleep because A&M really needs this, and Mississippi State doesn't. And here's the thing, because Mississippi State's been one of the hottest teams in the country. But do you think Chris Lemonis would have beaten Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Missouri?
Probably not.
So this was kind of Justin Parker's first true test. And a lot of the issues that this Mississippi State team had at the beginning of the year, got walking guys, making errors in the field, as they had 2 really costly errors in that second inning that allowed A&M to blow it open. I think that Mississippi State, it sucks to lose, and it sucks to lose early, but this was the perfect game if you're Justin Parker. You get your guys humble, saying you're not really as good as you think you are. If you play like this in a regional, a 4 seed's going to bounce you. So while they did lose, Mississippi State's squarely in the tournament. They were not going to be a 2-seed or host. This is a perfect scenario if you're Justin Parker to get the team hungry and ready again.
Yeah, certainly you would have liked to win, but no, I agree with you, and I get where you're coming from the standpoint of I don't know that State really could have improved their standing a whole lot, their seed line. They would have had to make it like a Sunday or win it to potentially have postseason baseball to do whatever. So realistically, they weren't going to do a whole lot for.
The only thing that really changes is they're going to wear gray pants as opposed to white pants in their opening game. That's the only thing that changed.
Right, exactly. So from the Texas A&M perspective, Jake, this was my first time seeing A&M in person this season, and it went how I thought it would from the standpoint, you look at this group, and if I just woke up out of a coma and I watched them today, I would say, yeah, that's the A&M team I thought they would be. They're probably ranked top 5 in the country. Look at the roster. They've just got dude on dude on dude. Kent had 2 RBI. Talked about Jace Lavalette. Royo had an RBI. Farr had 2 RBIs down at the bottom of the lineup. But, they just got guys up and down this lineup. It is – you watch them, and it's just hard to believe they're in the position they are. But certainly, when they're on, which they haven't been on a lot, they can swing it as well as anybody. So, and they can pitch it as well when you got a guy like Prager going. So, do they go Lampkin tomorrow? I think will be interesting.
No, I think they're going to go Patton tomorrow, Lampkin, if they go. Just because Lampkin threw a complete game against Georgia, if you remember correctly, back on I think that was Saturday because they did a doubleheader. So he's on very, very short rest. But I think the thing that's been the most impressive for me was Clayton Freshcorn coming out of the bullpen when that game was kind of still in a balance just from an out standpoint. He's had just a disappointing season, and I think even he would tell you that. This is a guy that was supposed to be the closer, and he's been relegated to pitching on weekday games with a ERA around 5.50. He comes out, no hits him over the course of 2 innings. That was really good to see. And then Lions, keeping some of your guys, because at the end of the day, you have three really good aces that you feel really good about in Patton, Lampkin, and obviously Prager. You're going to get, 12 outs from Weston Moss. And then after that, you really don't know where you're going to get outs from with this team. So staying on the right side of the bullpen, not having to use the Caden Wilsons, the Blake Jacksons, I think is going to really tell the story of this A&M team is how long can they go without using those three guys, which, Rudis threw 14 pitches today. Lions threw 14 pitches today. Fresh Corn only threw 22. Those three guys can go, against that quote-unquote LSU game if they make it past that Auburn team.
And no Caden Sorrell, Jake, in the game today. Be curious to see if he can go tomorrow. Obviously, that's a guy you don't – well, I say you don't want to push. You might need to because there's no baseball after this if you don't win. So, Texas A&M
he's having a problem gripping the bat. From what I heard today, he didn't even take BP, that he was available to run should they need him to run. But, 24 hours is a long, long time in terms of your body. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they play it tomorrow.
Yeah, Texas A&M gets the Auburn Tigers. Of course, that's in a game that was slated originally for tonight. Gets bumped back because of the delay. So 11 a.m. Central Time, it'll be A&M and Auburn. Auburn's first action in the tournament. Really briefly, thoughts on that one, Jake?
I'm excited. It'll be interesting to see which way Auburn goes. I think they'll probably do their 3-3-3 game that they're kind of been famous for. A&M will probably counter with Patton. Patton's been really good the first time through the order, and then he's been subpar 4 innings or later, so they really need a long outing from him. It's going to be, I think, just a barn burner from the lineups because it's 2 very, very deep lineups.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game. Hopefully we start to get some
pending
competitive baseball. I don't know if we'll see that quite yet. Who knows? Maybe it'll be that one. Maybe the game's later today. But 9-0. Again, Aggies get the W, and at least for one more day, Jake, Michael Early and Texas A&M live to play another day. The game that just concluded now, Tennessee takes care of Alabama, final score of 15-10. Jake, this was a story. The Vols bats come alive. 20 hits for Tennessee and taking this one in. You look at the scores here. You look at the innings, inning by inning. Tennessee scored 1 in the first, 1 in the second, 3 in the fourth, 1 in the fifth, 5 in the sixth, 4 in the eighth. Alabama actually puts up a 4 spot at the top of the ninth to make this thing look a lot closer than it was. Jake, I think these two teams are similar from the standpoint of they both do things at times that are self-inflicted errors, shoot themselves in the foot. I go back to the play to the second baseman. He rushes it. Yeah, Curley rushes and Fisher's not at the bag. I put it on both guys. Rushes it and he's not at the bag. That opens the floodgates for Alabama to tie the game. Give the Vols credit, though. They storm back. Alabama, obviously, I think bullpen depth has been a concern for them all season. That really, really showed in this game. Zane Adams, they even put him in a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding, and he just flat out was not very good. But this is a Tennessee lineup. It seemed like every inning, Jake, Alabama giving Tennessee extra opportunities, whether it was a 2-out walk, it was a base hit or a pass ball once you walk the guy. This lineup, Tennessee's lineup, still one of the best in the country. You give them extra opportunities, they are going to take advantage. They're going to hurt you at some point. Your thoughts on Tennessee's big win, and now it's setting up the matchup, the battle of the UTs, Tennessee and Texas tomorrow afternoon. But first, focusing on this one, Tennessee beating Bama 15-10.
Yeah, it was an impressive day at the plate for the Tennessee Volunteers. You mentioned Alabama kind of gifting Tennessee some free outs. I know LeBron had 2 errors. They had a few pass balls, a few walks. But this was the Tennessee team that we saw back in non-conference that had idiots like me saying, hey, that this team's probably better than the one that they faced before, or the one that was the year before. Deep lineup. A lot of them took high quality at bats. But Tony V's going to have to make a decision on what he's going to do with Dean Curley. That's the thing that I think is really going to be the one to track here is, do you DH him? Do you leave him at second? They brought in Antigua there at the end, who really, is a kind of struggle bus hitting. Do you bring Antigua in from a defensive standpoint? That's the part that I think Tony V is going to really have to take a long, hard look in the mirror. But for one more night, Tennessee had the douchebaggery and the swaggerness And I think if they can get back to this, it reminds me a ton of that team that went to Omaha that went into Southern Miss and won that series. If they can get the swagger back, and they're running out of time to get it back, it's going to be a dangerous team. And I'm really excited for that one tomorrow. But we'll touch on it here in a bit.
Jake, yeah, we will in a second. From the Bama perspective, again, I think it's as simple as, the thing I noticed with Alabama's pitching staff, Jake, and I know there were some that wished that Bama would have gone the route of throwing Riley Quick, which, again, you're sensitive with a guy like that. You're very careful because he's projected a first-rounder. The guy had Tommy John at a point. You're not going – I think the big thing, talking to Bama fans, is it's not even the pitch count with him. It's the number of days of rest. And they are just simply not going to throw him out there on short, especially in the SEC tournament. That said, the thing I noticed with their pitching staff, Jake, Bama gets to 2 strikes a lot. They just don't have a lot of guys that have that put-away stuff.
And that's been, I think, their biggest issue. That really is their philosophy, though, is, they don't want to walk people. They want to fill up the zone. And I don't think they do a good job tunneling with 2 strikes, of having that killer instinct on the pitching staff. I know that that's something that you and I have talked about, of when a pitcher's on, is if he's finishing with 2 strikes. Bama doesn't really have that. And they have Oz that they feel really good about pitching 2 times in a weekend. They have what they think is Zane Adams, where he's going to throw 5 innings of 3-run ball. And they have Riley Quick. But outside of that, this is a team in a regional that's going to really struggle to find outs.
Yeah. It all comes down to pitching depth in the postseason. And you could argue this too, Jake. This is being a little bit nitpicky, but I think it's fair. The lack of success swinging it yesterday against Mizzou forced Alabama to use some high leverage arms that they absolutely could have used today.
They could have used Oz today.
Could have used Oz. It just, you look at them, they didn't have a single guy go longer than an inning and 2/3. It's just going to be really hard. Here's the thing. You're not going to keep up with this Tennessee lineup blow for blow offensively. Everything they haven't done.
They punted a little bit with the Bama lineup. I think that was kind of a little bit more is they kind of knew that they were going to lose after they went to Zane Adams in that spot. So they were kind of trying to cycle through, get guys some work in. But, just to not completely pile on Bama, it's a good lineup. Wouldn't you say it's one of the more underrated lineups in the SEC?
Yeah,
they battle at the plate.
Jake, let me ask you this. Did Bama do enough to host, in your opinion?
They were never going to host.
See, and I know it's probably biased, but talking to some Bama folks out there, they felt as if they shouldn't have needed to win 2 or 3 in Hoover to be in that 15 or 16 hosting spot. So obviously you beat Mizzou. I think they probably had to win this one to have any real shot to steal a host.
Yeah, because Tennessee's still clear above them in the pecking order. They took a series from them earlier in the year. Yeah. And they're behind Auburn. They're behind Vandy. I would even go as far as to argue they're behind Ole Miss in terms of the pecking order. But that whole tier of Bama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, it'll sell tickets that they'll be playing for a hosting spot. But I think all 3 of those teams are going to be going on the road, unfortunately.
Yeah, more than likely for sure. And then, Jake, looking ahead to tomorrow, this one's going to feed families, man. Even if the game doesn't deliver, the toxicity on social media, I'm very excited to see the battle of the UTs, the Tennessee Volunteers, the Texas Longhorns. You're probably going to get Liam Doyle on the bump for the balls tomorrow afternoon. Obviously, Jim Schlossnagle has come out and said, hey, we're going to do everything we can to win, essentially within reason. We're not going to stress anybody out. We've secured what we need to secure. Jake, again, it's easy to – and I know he won't stress anybody out, but it's easy to say all that. But, buddy, when that thing gets going tomorrow, that's going to be – I think there's going to be an intensity probably in the building we haven't felt the entire tournament.
I will say this. They have the best draw of any of these top 4 teams because what they really want to do is okay, well, let's take some high-quality at-bats against guys that aren't us. Let's make our pitchers go against the lineup that can really challenge our pitching staff. And they get Liam Doyle pitching, likely, and a red-hot Tennessee lineup. So it's a good one to keep the boys hungry. My buddy Occupy Left Field had from a pretty good source that Texas is likely going to be the early game. So if there's any Texas fans listening, plan accordingly the Friday of the regional to take off and go to the game. I've heard that there's been some murmurs about Schloss writing some notes for people, so go ahead and take that off. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be a good one of Liam Doyle against a Texas offense that has been struggling and been striking out a ton. I mean, this is the ultimate time to look yourself in the mirror and see where you are as a team is playing Liam Doyle in Tennessee when they feel like they're still playing the host in terms of Tennessee. It's going to be must-see TV, in the words of Charles Barkley.
Do we know who Texas is starting tomorrow?
I would
do we know
guess.
Who likely?
I think that I don't think they'll stretch anybody out. What is that, Thursday? Who threw Thursday for him last week?
Let's see.
I think we could see Flores. I could see Burns getting stretched out a little bit. I don't think it'll be Ruger. I don't think it'll be.
Cade Bing started last Thursday for them.
He didn't really pitch. I mean, they're still looking for that third arm, I think. I mean, granted, there's a lot of SEC teams that are still looking for
Bing only threw 52 pitches. So
Bing, I don't think it'll be Harrison. Bing or Flores, I think, will probably get the nod.
Yeah, Riojas threw 65 pitches on Friday, and then on Saturday, I'm sure it was Luke Harrison. Yeah, he threw I don't have the pitch count, but he went 6 innings. So
yeah, I mean, he was
all the guys. So
he's their safest bet too, I think, in terms of a pitching staff. Man, they're really missing Spencer. This would be a team really set up to roll if Spencer was in the rotation.
This would be a heck of a showdown if we got Liam Doyle against Jared Spencer. But we don't. We'll see if Texas can piece it together.
Well, we digress. We'll have to We'll have to just deal with Liam Doyle and probably Jason Flores. Boo-hoo us.
We'll have to dream about that one. Obviously tonight, guys, we will break down Oklahoma, Georgia, which is about to get going here in about 20 minutes, and the nightcap, which should be a fun one, Ole Miss in Florida, Liam Peterson against Hunter Elliott. Before we get out of here, Jake, really quickly, your thoughts. Carrick Jackson back in 2026 for Mizzou. I think it's a great move. There are many more problems that Mizzou has in regards to elevating their baseball program that have nothing to do with Carrick Jackson. I think he's about as good a head coach as they could ask for with the situation they're in. So I want to get your take on that. And then Wes Johnson gets the extension. Dogs lock him down. You can take him off the hot board for Mississippi State. Also, Kendall Rogers reporting that sounds like Butch Thompson will not be going anywhere as well. So thoughts on Carrick Jackson and then thoughts on Wes Johnson and what it means for the state search.
Carrick Jackson, I think, is a fantastic, fantastic coach. You talk to former players that were at Memphis and even some of the guys that I played with at Southern. They absolutely rave about him. When I got to talk to him after they beat A&M on Friday night, I think he truly does love the University of Missouri, which is easier said than done. They had a long list of coaches that turned them down. It is, without a doubt, the hardest job in the SEC. I had one coach equate it to playing a Sun Belt team in the SEC in terms of budgets and not a good Sun Belt team. They have impossible recruiting, impossible budgets, no fan support. I think that if they give Carrick Jackson even the same support that Nick Minge is getting at Kentucky, I think people would be pleasantly surprised with the amount of coaching that Carrick Jackson can do. He is a fantastic, fantastic coach.
And then Wes Johnson, your thoughts on what I think more so what it means, I guess, for state. I don't know if you've heard anything. That's kind of the chatter has died down a little bit, but we now know it will not be Wes Johnson. He did say he loves Georgia, so he said he loves Georgia.
It's not going to be Wes. It's not going to be Butch. It's not going to be Eric Bakich. Look for Waz at Oregon, Skylar Meade at Troy, and then Tom Walter at Wake Forest. With the pipe, just how Wes was a pipe dream, the Brian O'Connor one is still a pipe dream and is still alive. I think it's a little bit ridiculous out there, but state fans seem to think that he's coming there.
Interesting. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see who state hires. By the way, it's not missed on me. Great timing by Georgia to get this out the morning of their game against Oklahoma today. Very strategic by them. And again, like I mentioned, we'll talk about that one tonight. Jake, really good stuff, man. Appreciate you taking the time, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Before we get out of here, do want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel because, as always, we're brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The wait is over. Baseball season's here, and you can start the season strong on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now FanDuel is celebrating the return of baseball by giving new customers $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel's got so many ways for you to get in on the action, from hits to steals to home runs. They got a lineup filled with all of your favorite bets, or if pitching is more of your thing, FanDuel's got a deep bullpen of bets from strikeouts to shutout innings. So when you place your first bet, it can be on almost anything, and if it hits, you'll get $250 in bonus bets. And, of course, guys, don't forget, they've got lines, they've got totals on every single game of the SEC baseball tournament and the college baseball postseason. So just visit FanDuel.com/SECU to join today. That's FanDuel.com/SECU. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official partners of Major League Baseball. Must be 21 and up and present in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 and up and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets. Expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777. Or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts. Or call 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Once again, Texas A&M and Tennessee both advance. Mississippi State, Alabama headed home. 2 more games tonight. We'll be back later tonight, break those down. Appreciate Jake Mckeever. Appreciate you all tuning in. As always, guys, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, or we get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. For Jake Mckeever, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate you all tuning in. We'll talk to you all later tonight, live from Hoover. Y'all take care.